The champagne flute feels impossibly cold against my palm, a stark contrast to the boiling sea of realization crashing within me. Across the small, linen-draped table, under the soft glow of what used to be our favorite restaurant chandelier, Michael is on one knee. Not for me. My breath catches. A fishhook in my throat. The diamond in the little velvet box he's holding catches the light, a vicious, winking star. It's aimed at her. Lara. Her gasp is a theatrical masterpiece, hand flying to her perfectly glossed lips, eyes wide with feigned surprise. Feigned, because I see the flicker of triumph, the smug certainty that's been shadowing her face for months. He's reciting words, I think. Words I probably heard a lifetime ago, now twisted, tainted, offered to another woman on the very day, the very anniversary, he once pledged them to me. The restaurant, usually a gentle hum of quiet conversations and clinking cutlery, seems to have dimmed its own lights, spotlighting this grotesque play. My heart hammers a frantic, desperate rhythm against my ribs, a trapped bird wanting to flee. But my feet, their lead. My smile, a rictus I plastered on hours ago, feels like it's cracking the porcelain shell of my composure. He doesn't even glance at me. I'm a ghost at his feast of betrayal. This feeling, this hollowness mixed with a rage, so potent it tastes like acid. If you've ever felt anything close to this, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're new here and my story resonates, please subscribe. It means more than you can imagine to know I'm not alone in these battles. 10 years. A decade. That's what today was supposed to mark. 10 years since I stood opposite Michael, not in a hushed, dimly lit restaurant full of strangers, but under an arch of white roses, the summer sun warm on my face, hope a tangible thing, a living pulse between us. We built a life from scratch, or so I thought. He had the ambition, the restless energy that could charm birds from trees or, as it turned out, convince investors to part with their money. I had the steady hand, the quiet belief, and a small inheritance that became the seed capital for his first venture. "We're a team, Clara," he'd said, his eyes shining with that fierce determination I'd found so captivating. "You and me against the world." And I believed him. God, how I believed him. Our anniversaries were sacred. Or, again, so I thought. This restaurant, La Toile Filante, the shooting star, was our place. We'd celebrated every significant milestone here. The first big contract he landed. The down payment on our house. The 5th anniversary, when he'd gifted me a delicate sapphire necklace, whispering it matched my eyes and our future, bright and endless. Now, the sapphires feel like chips of ice against my skin. The name of the restaurant feels like a cruel joke. A shooting star. Brilliant, dazzling, and then gone, plummeting into darkness. The first crack in the facade appeared about a year ago. Subtle, almost imperceptible at first. He started working later, much later. "New project, babe, huge potential," he'd murmur, already half asleep when he finally crawled into bed, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine, a scent I couldn't quite place, but which pricked at my senses like a thorn. I'd lie there in the dark, the scent a ghost between us, and tell myself I was being paranoid. Successful men are busy. Important men have demanding schedules. I was being the clingy, insecure wife I never wanted to be. So I'd swallow the questions, smooth down the ruffled edges of my unease, and be the supportive partner. Then came the hushed phone calls, the way he'd angle his body away from me when a text message lit up a screen. The business dinners on weekends. The credit card statements started showing charges I didn't recognize, expensive gifts from boutiques I'd never heard of, dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. Small things, easily explained away with a casual, "Oh, that was for a client," or networking, you know how it is. His explanations were always smooth, too smooth like polished stones, offering no purchase for my doubts to cling to. Yet, they accumulated, little grains of sand forming an unsettling dune in the landscape of our marriage. The inciting incident, the moment the ground truly shifted beneath my feet, wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming match, No tearful confrontation. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Michael was supposedly in a critical all-day merger meeting across town. I'd accidentally picked up his suit jacket from the back of the chair in our study, intending to take it to the dry cleaners. A small, folded receipt fell out of the pocket. Not for a client lunch. Not for office supplies. It was from a jeweler. A very expensive jeweler. And the item listed? Custom emerald solitaire engagement ring, emerald. My birthstone is sapphire. Lara's, I would later discover, is emerald. My blood ran cold. Colder than the champagne flute currently in my hand. I remember sinking into his leather office chair, the receipt trembling in my fingers. Merger meeting. He was merging, all right. Merging his life with someone else's. The air left my lungs in a silent whoosh, as if I'd been punched. The carefully constructed reality I'd lived in for a decade shimmered and cracked like a reflection in disturbed water. It wasn't just the ring. It was the casualness of his deception, the depth of his betrayal. He was planning to propose to another woman while still married to me, while still sharing my bed, my life, my future. The initial shock was a physical blow. I spent days and a days, functioning on autopilot, making coffee, going to my part-time job at the art gallery, even managing strained conversations with Michael, all while a silent scream looped in my head. Sleep became a battlefield, my mind replaying every shared moment, every promise, now tainted, searching for clues I must have missed. Was any of it real? Did he ever truly love me? Or was I just a convenient stepping stone, a comfortable placeholder until someone better, someone like Lara, came along? The name on the discreetly tucked-away private Instagram account I found bookmarked on his laptop. Lara Thorne. Younger, glossier, with a predatory gleam in her professionally whitened smile. My first instinct was to confront him, to unleash the torrent of pain and anger that was consuming me, to throw the receipt in his face, to demand answers, to watch him squirm. But something held me back. A cold, hard knot of something that wasn't just grief, but a burgeoning, unfamiliar fury. He wouldn't just get away with this. He wouldn't just discard me like a worn-out coat and stroll into a new life, leaving me shattered. Not if I could help it. I started digging, quietly, methodically. Late nights, when he was asleep or supposedly working, became my domain. I delved into shared accounts, old emails, cloud storage we both had access to, but he'd long forgotten I knew the passwords for. It was a painful, nauseating journey through the underbelly of his secret life. The sheer volume of his deceit was staggering. The romantic getaways disguised as business trips. The lavish gifts. The affectionate, sickeningly sweet messages exchanged with Lara. Each discovery was like another twist of the knife. I felt myself becoming someone I didn't recognize, a ghost haunting my own life, sifting through the ashes of my marriage. He was good at covering his tracks, I'll give him that. But he underestimated me. He always had. He saw me as soft, compliant Clara, the supportive wife. He never saw the steel I'd inherited from my grandmother, the woman who'd rebuilt her life from nothing after the war. That steel was now being forged in the fires of his betrayal. The challenges mounted. He became more careless, or perhaps more arrogant, as his relationship with Lara intensified. He'd leave his phone unlocked more often, humming a little tune as he replied to her texts, a secretive smile playing on his lips. He started making comments about our life together, subtle digs. Don't you ever feel like we're in a rut, Clara? Or, maybe we need more excitement. Each word was a calculated cruelty, designed to make me feel inadequate, to pave the way for his eventual exit. He was trying to gaslight me into believing our marriage was already dead, that I was the problem. The emotional toll was immense. I lost weight. Sleep was a luxury I could rarely afford, and when it came, it was filled with nightmares. My friends noticed. You okay, Clara? You seem distant. One of them asked, her voice laced with concern. I'd force a smile, murmur something about work stress. I couldn't bring myself to voice the ugliness, not yet. It felt too raw, too humiliating. And a part of me, a deeply buried, stubborn part, Wasn't ready to give up on the idea of not reconciliation. No, that ship had sailed and sunk. But on the idea of justice. Or maybe something closer to vengeance. The evidence I gathered was damning. Photos from Lara's not-so-private-after-all social media, tagging him in exotic locations on dates he was supposedly at conferences. Credit card statements detailing their entire sordid affair, paid for from accounts that were, in part, mine. But the real turning point, the moment that shifted my grief into a cold, hard resolve, came from an unexpected source. I'd hired a private investigator. It felt like a cliché, something out of a bad movie, but I needed irrefutable proof, something beyond digital breadcrumbs. The PI was a discreet, older woman named Ms. Albright, with eyes that had seen too much but missed nothing. She delivered a slim manila envelope a few weeks later. Inside were photographs. Michael and Lara, laughing, kissing, holding hands. It was brutal, but expected. What wasn't expected was the additional report Ms. Albright had compiled. Standard background on the other party, Mrs. Davies, she'd said, her voice neutral. And a cursory look at your husband's recent financial dealings, as per your secondary request. That secondary request had been an afterthought, a vague unease about some large, unexplained withdrawals I'd noticed. Ms. Albright's report laid it bare. Michael wasn't just cheating on me emotionally, he was cheating me financially. He'd been systematically siphoning funds from our joint business accounts, moving assets into private accounts under his name only. He was building a nest egg for his new life with Lara, using money I had helped earn, money that was half mine. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculated greed, extinguished the last embers of sorrow and ignited a full-blown inferno of rage. This wasn't just about a broken heart anymore. This was about survival. This was about taking back what was mine. That's when the idea first sparked.
L'étoile filante.
Our restaurant. A few weeks prior, I'd overheard a hushed conversation between the owner, Monsieur Dubois, and his wife. They were looking to retire, to sell the restaurant or find a majority investor. At the time, it was just a piece of sad news, another cherished part of my life potentially disappearing. Now it was an opportunity. A crazy, audacious, terrifying opportunity. What if I became that investor? What if I owned the stage upon which he planned to unveil his grand betrayal? The thought was exhilarating, a jolt of adrenaline that cut through the fog of my despair. It was a long shot. I had some savings, the remnants of my inheritance I'd carefully guarded, but it wouldn't be enough for a controlling stake. I'd need to be smart, strategic. I'd need to move assets he didn't know I had or could access. The challenge was immense, almost impossible. But the image of his face, of Lara's face, when they realized what I'd done, that image fueled me. It became my singular focus. The weeks leading up to our anniversary were a blur of clandestine meetings, hushed phone calls, and meticulous planning. I consulted a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman specializing in acrimonious divorces and financial fraud. Catherine. She was impressed by the evidence I'd compiled. "He's made it easy for you in some ways, Clara," she'd said, a grim smile on her face. "Men like this, they get arrogant. They think they're untouchable." She helped me understand how to protect my assets, how to leverage his infidelity and financial misconduct in the inevitable divorce. Securing the funds for the restaurant investment was the hardest part. I had to liquidate some stocks my grandmother had left me, investments Michael knew nothing about, tucked away for a rainy day I never imagined would be this torrential. I took out a discreet personal loan, leveraging my share of our marital home, which Catherine assured me he couldn't touch immediately without my consent. Consent I was clearly not going to give. Every transaction was a risk, every signature a step further into uncharted territory. There were days I was convinced he'd find out. A misplaced bank statement, an email he might accidentally see. He was so wrapped up in Lara and his own self-importance, however, that he remained blissfully, arrogantly oblivious. He saw my quietness, my occasional forced smiles, as sadness, perhaps resignation. He probably thought I suspected something but was too weak, too broken, to do anything about it. He was so wrong. The emotional toll of living this double life was crushing. I had to pretend to be excited about our anniversary dinner at L'Etoile Filante, a dinner he suggested with a magnanimous air, as if bestowing a great favor. "Just us, Clara," he'd said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Like old times. We need to remember the good things." The irony was a bitter pill I had to swallow daily. I'd smile, nod, murmur about how lovely that would be, while inside I was rehearsing my lines, fortifying my defenses, preparing for war. There were moments I almost broke. One evening, he came home early, found me at the dining table surrounded by papers I'd hastily tried to cover. Financial statements, legal documents. My heart leaped into my throat. "Working on something?" he asked, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. I forced a laugh, my voice trembling slightly. "Just some old gallery accounts I need to sort out. Tax season prep, you know," he grunted, seemingly satisfied, and wandered off to pour himself a drink, already absorbed in a call, to Lara no doubt. I'd sagged against the chair, shaking, when he was out of earshot. That was too close. The stress was a constant companion, a tightening band around my chest. I felt like an actress in a high-stakes play, every word, every gesture, scrutinized. But with each passing day, as my plans solidified, so did my resolve. The pain was still there, a dull ache beneath the surface, but it was now overlaid with a cold, clear sense of purpose. He wasn't just going to break my heart, he was going to pay for it. And he was going to do it publicly, in the very place he'd chosen for his grand romantic gesture with his mistress. The turning point, the moment I knew there was no going back, was the day before our anniversary. I was in Catherine's office, the final investment papers for L'Etoile Filante spread across her mahogany desk. Monsieur Dubois, a kind, elderly man with sad eyes, was there. He'd been hesitant at first, selling his life's work. But I'd shared a carefully edited version of my vision for the restaurant, preserving its charm while infusing it with new energy. And, perhaps more persuasively, I'd met his asking price without haggling. "You're sure about this, Madame Davies?" he asked, his French accent thick. "It is a big commitment." I met his gaze, my own steady. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Monsieur Dubois." He nodded slowly, then signed the papers. I signed after him, my hand surprisingly firm. A wave of something fierce and triumphant washed over me. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It was something harder, colder. Validation. Power. I was no longer a victim. I was the architect of my own vindication. That night, Michael was particularly effusive. He brought home flowers, roses, red ones, just like the ones he used to give me. "For tomorrow, my love," he said, trying for a tender smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "A decade. Can you believe it?" "No, Michael," I said, my voice quiet even. "I really can't." He missed the double meaning, of course. Or chose to. He was too busy anticipating his own triumph. The morning of our anniversary dawned gray and overcast, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I went through the motions, a strange calmness settling over me. It was the calm of a general before a decisive battle. I chose my dress carefully, a sleek, dark blue sheath, elegant but understated. The sapphire necklace he'd given me lay cold against my skin. Armor. He was already dressed when I came downstairs, looking dapper in his best suit, a little too eager, a little too pleased with himself. "Ready for our special night?" he asked, giving me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek. His cologne, the expensive one Lara liked, filled the air. "As I'll ever be," I replied, my smile serene. The drive to L'Etoile Filante was filled with his insipid chatter about work, about some deal he was supposedly closing. I tuned most of it out, focusing on my breathing on the plan. He was a good actor, I had to admit. He played the part of the attentive husband, pointing out landmarks from our early days, feigning nostalgia. All for the benefit of his grand finale, no doubt. We were seated at our table, the one in the quiet alcove by the window. The restaurant was buzzing, fuller than usual for a weeknight. Monsieur Dubois, now technically my employee, greeted us with his customary warmth, though I caught a flicker of something knowing in his eyes as he seated me. "A pleasure to have you, Madame Davies, Monsieur Davies. Happy anniversary." "Thank you, Jean-Pierre," Michael said, beaming. "We wouldn't celebrate anywhere else." "Oh, you have no idea," I thought. The meal was exquisite as always. The food, however, tasted like ash in my mouth. Michael kept the conversation light, reminiscing about our best moments. It was a macabre performance. I nodded, smiled, played my part, all the while a clock was ticking down in my head. Any minute now. Then, as if on cue, just as the dessert plates were cleared, I saw her. Lara, slinking through the tables, dressed in a ridiculously tight, crimson dress, a beacon of scarlet sin. She accidentally bumped into our table. "Oh, Michael. Fancy meeting you here," she gushed, her voice a little too loud, drawing glances from nearby diners. "And this must be Clara?" Her eyes, heavily made up, swept over me with a dismissive air. Michael feigned surprise, though not very convincingly. "Lara, what a coincidence." "Yes, this is my wife, Clara." "Clara, this is Lara Thorne, a business associate." "Charmed," I said, my voice smooth as silk, offering a small, polite smile that didn't reach my eyes. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Other diners were definitely watching now. This was better than dinner theater. Michael cleared his throat, a nervous energy thrumming off him. "Well, since you're here, Lara, perhaps you could join us for a moment?" He didn't even look at me for approval. He was caught up in his own script. Lara simpered. "Oh, I wouldn't want to intrude on your anniversary." "Nonsense, nonsense," Michael blustered, pulling up a chair from a nearby empty table. He was rushing now, eager to get to his big moment. And then he launched into it. A speech. About new beginnings, about finding unexpected happiness, about following one's heart. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were fixed on Lara, a besotted, idiotic expression on his face. My stomach churned, but my expression remained placid. I sipped my water, watching the spectacle unfold. Then, the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I'd replayed in my mind 1,000 times. He slid off his chair, down on one knee. Not before me, his wife of 10 years, but before Lara Thorne, his mistress, in our restaurant, on our anniversary. The gasps from the surrounding tables were audible. I saw a woman at a nearby table actually cover her mouth. "Lara," Michael began, his voice thick with emotion, holding up that ostentatious emerald ring, "you have shown me what true passion, what true life is. Will you marry me?" Lara's face was a mask of ecstatic, triumphant delight. "Oh, Michael." "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." She practically shrieked, thrusting her hand out for him to slide the ring onto her finger. She then had the audacity to flash it around, catching the light, her gaze flicking to me for a nanosecond, a glint of pure, unadulterated victory in her eyes. I let the moment hang there. Let them bask in their perceived glory. Let the other diners absorb the sheer, brazen audacity of it all. Michael was still on one knee, grinning up at Lara like a fool. Lara was admiring her new ring, turning her hand this way and that. Then I cleared my throat. Not loudly, just enough. Slowly, as if in a dream, Michael turned his head towards me. His smile faltered slightly, a flicker of unease finally dawning in his eyes. Perhaps he expected tears, a scene, a quiet retreat in shame. He didn't expect what came next. Right on cue, as Catherine and I had meticulously planned with Monsieur Dubois, or rather, my new restaurant manager, Jean-Pierre approached our table. He was beaming, a bottle of champagne in his hand, 2 flutes carried by a waiter beside him. "Monsieur Davies, Miss Thorne," he began, his voice clear and carrying. "Congratulations on your announcement," his eyes twinkled. Then he turned, his smile widening, directly to me. "And of course, a most special welcome and congratulations to our new principal owner and investor, Madame Clara Davies. We are all so incredibly thrilled to have you lead L'Etoile Filante into its next chapter." Your vision for the expansion, it is truly magnifique." He gestured for the waiter to pour me a glass of the celebratory champagne. The silence that fell over our little alcove, and indeed a significant portion of the restaurant, was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. Or perhaps the shattering of Michael's world. He froze. Literally froze. Still half-crouched, one knee on the plush carpet, the ridiculous emerald ring on Lara's finger suddenly looking cheap and gaudy. His face, which had been flushed with triumph, drained of all color. His jaw, which had been set in a smug line, went slack. He looked from Jean-Pierre to me, then back to Jean-Pierre, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrified comprehension. Lara's theatrical smile vanished, replaced by a confused, then rapidly paling, frown. "Owner? What is he talking about, Michael?" she hissed, her voice suddenly shrill. I took a slow, deliberate sip of the champagne Jean-Pierre had poured for me. It tasted like victory. Cold, crisp, and utterly satisfying. I smiled then, a genuine smile this time, though it probably had more than a touch of ice in it. "Yes, darling," I said, my voice calm, level, carrying easily in the sudden quiet. "Anniversary surprise." I gestured around the elegant dining room. "I thought, since you're so fond of new beginnings and grand gestures, I'd invest in one too. This 1 inch. I paused, letting it sink in. Michael was now staring at me, his face a mask of utter disbelief and dawning terror. Lara looked like she'd swallowed a wasp. And as my first official act as the new owner of La Toile Filante, I continued, my voice hardening slightly, "I'm afraid this particular engagement party is over." I met Michael's stunned gaze. "And so, my dear, is our marriage. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Catherine is quite looking forward to discussing your fraudulent activities and your moral indiscretions." I then turned my gaze to Lara, whose face was now a delightful shade of mottled red and white. "As for you, Miss Thorne, I believe you were just leaving?" I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod to the 2 rather large security guards I'd arranged to have discreetly present, who now began to move purposefully towards our table. Jean-Pierre, ever the professional, subtly guided them. "Security," I said, raising an eyebrow. "Perhaps you can escort these 2 out. Their celebration seems to have concluded rather abruptly." "And Jean-Pierre," I added, turning back to my manager, "please ensure their bill is sent to Mr. Davies' private address. I believe he's about to have considerably fewer joint accounts to draw from." The aftermath was swift. Michael, for once in his life, was speechless. He simply gaped, his face ashen. Lara, however, was not so reticent. She started to sputter, something about humiliation, about me being a vindictive, well, I didn't quite catch the last word as security gently but firmly began to escort her towards the exit, Michael stumbling after her, a broken, bewildered man. The emerald ring on her finger seemed to mock them both. A smattering of applause actually broke out from a few tables nearby. I think Mrs. Henderson from Table 5, who'd witnessed the whole proposal, even let out a small bravo. I remained seated, taking another sip of my champagne. It was, indeed, excellent. Jean-Pierre reappeared at my side, a subtle smile playing on his lips. "Will there be anything else, Madame Davies?" "No, Jean-Pierre, thank you," I said. "Perhaps just another glass of this. And then, I think I'll call it a night. It's been a very long decade." He nodded. "Indeed, madam. To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, raising my glass. Walking out of La Toile Filante that night, alone, was a strange experience. The cool night air felt clean on my face. The city lights seemed brighter. There was a profound sadness, yes. The end of a marriage, the death of a dream I'd cherished for so long. That was a tragedy, in its own way. But beneath the sadness, there was a burgeoning sense of peace, of lightness, and of fierce, undeniable pride. I hadn't just survived his betrayal. I had risen from its ashes, stronger, wiser, and, as it turned out, the owner of a rather fine restaurant. The divorce was messy, as Catherine had predicted, but also decisively in my favor. The evidence of his infidelity was irrefutable. The proof of his financial malfeasance, meticulously documented by Ms. Albright and further investigated by Catherine's forensic accountants, was damning. Michael tried to fight, of course. He blustered, he threatened, he even tried to play the victim. But the fight had gone out of him that night in the restaurant. He was a shadow of his former arrogant self. Lara, I heard, disappeared from his life almost as quickly as she'd appeared, the emerald ring presumably returned or pawned. His grand new beginning had imploded before it even began. L'Etoile Filante thrived under my new ownership. I didn't make drastic changes. I respected its history, its soul. But I infused it with a new energy, a new vision, much as Jean-Pierre had so kindly announced. It became a symbol not of what I had lost, but of what I had reclaimed. My strength, my independence, my future. There are still moments, late at night sometimes, when the ghosts of the past whisper, the memory of his betrayal, the sting of his deceit. But they are fainter now, overshadowed by the quiet satisfaction of knowing I faced the storm and navigated my way through it, not just intact, but victorious. He tried to write my ending, to cast me as the tragic, discarded wife. He didn't realize I was capable of rewriting the entire script, taking over the production, and casting myself as the lead in my own, much more interesting, story. Thanks for being here with me through this. It's a journey, isn't it? Life. If this story touched you, or if you've walked a similar path, I'd love to hear your version in the comments. And subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life. Stories of finding strength in the hardest of places. It truly does help more than you know.